Welcome to the Fantasy NBA Today podcast.
What's happening, everybody? Welcome to Fantasy NBA Today. It's Tuesday, and we're just jumping straight in because it's a guest day. A guest. Yeah, at this point, you're not a guest. You don't even have to take your shoes off when you get in here. I'm Dan Besbris, and I am joined today by the wonderful Adam King. Good morning, Adam. I know it's shtick, but I'm doing it every damn time.
Good afternoon, Dan.
Thank you.
Yes, it is afternoon just. We're a little bit later than we normally are because of your things that are happening in your life.
Always.
Yes.
I tried to explain it at the beginning of yesterday's show, actually, the life as a moving puzzle and the toddler's nap schedule that's all thrown out of whack. I don't bore people with it. Anybody that has kids is like, oh, yeah, I know that period of time. And then everybody else is like, what are you talking about, man? Just get the damn show out there. So that's what we're doing, damn it. I am at Dan Besbris on Twitter. You can, of course, follow Adam at AdamKing91. This is a Sports Ethos presentation. That's sportsethos.com, or the single finest basketball fantasy news feed on planet Earth, at Ethos Fantasy BK. Go there now. And many of you seem to be doing it, which is awesome. I've been yelling at you guys to follow that, get your news there. It's the best, man. It's the combination of fastest and best analysis. Ethos Fantasy BK. You and I, Adam, we were trying to come up with like general topics to discuss, but what we like to try to do when we get together on this show is just kind of take the pulse of what the fantasy community is looking at. First things first, Happy New Year, Happy Holidays, all that good stuff. How you doing?
Yeah, pretty good. I mentioned there where we've been directed to work from home again, so it seems COVID hasn't gone away as I had hoped it would in 2022. It's still
not quite.
With us. Yeah. So no, look, good here, working from home for a few days, then on leave for 2 and a bit weeks.
All right.
Booked in for my COVID booster shot tomorrow, I believe. So hopefully that doesn't take the wind out of my sails too much. I've heard varying stories of how people react to getting that booster. So we'll see how I go. Yeah,
it's a roll of the dice. I think I think we had one of our sitters was tired for like a day, and I had fevers for a day. It's a moving target. At the end of it all, you'll be all right. I get the feeling,
fine, yes.
Yeah, you'll be fine. You're a big boy. Do we, I think, agree that one of the big things that folks are talking right now is guys coming back from injury? We sort of hit this weird little pivot point. Obviously, COVID is still at the forefront, and I want to talk about that too. What I haven't decided is what order we really ought to go in here. Probably we should start on the COVID front. It seems like, Adam, and you've been heavily in charge of keeping the list up to date over at Sports Ethos of everybody in protocols and streaming options as a result of that. It seems like the list is finally starting to shrink a little bit.
Yeah, I think fingers crossed, we're in a better space now in terms of COVID absences. But I mean, I woke up this morning and I think I saw that someone had gone into protocols. I can't remember who it was, but there, Frank Jackson went into protocols. But yeah, look, but it's Yves Pons as well for the Grizzlies. But we're definitely not seeing, and I guess for me, it's how many are going in when I wake up, because I wake up and they've all had their tests for the day, and yeah, we were getting, I mean, at one point there, the blurbs were all COVID people going in.
Yeah, wasn't there like 20 in one day? Some Sunday right around the holidays? Am I remembering that right?
Yeah, it would have been. It was pretty crazy. I actually got a couple of shifts off over Christmas and that sort of thing because we were away and whatever it was, and I missed a couple of those big days. I didn't have to write the blurbs. I was pretty happy about that.
Bullet dodged.
But yeah, look, it does seem just from sort of a big picture glance that, yeah, those numbers are dropping. We're getting a couple a day going into protocols, but nowhere near as many as we were, and hopefully that means that once they've had it, they've developed whatever it is, the antibodies, and then they're not unlikely to get it. We have had a few people that have gone in twice into protocols, but doesn't seem to be a lot yet.
Yeah, seems like that might have been Delta and then Omicron, but we're not healthcare professionals here, just sort of taking a stab at it. But yeah, it does seem like it's kind of cresting a little bit. And something I mentioned over the holidays when I know a lot of folks weren't paying attention to fantasy or a podcast was strategy has to change at that point, doesn't it? Like we've been, for a month now almost, we've been buried in this, and I pushed it as hard as anyone because I keep getting, like, I have to dial the wheel back farther and farther as I go through this thing. This all started with me seeing so many people on Twitter saying, I hate this, fantasy sucks, this isn't right. And so I was like, look, I got to do some shows where I'm telling people, you got to put your nose in it right now. This is like, it shouldn't be a walk in the park every time. If you outwork the other teams, if you get the better streamers, this is a chance actually to get a leg up. Forget the other side of it. Forget like, oh, woe is me, I have 5 guys out. How about, woe is everyone. We all have 5 guys out, and if I can figure the best replacements, I can beat these dudes. But now, I think we have to pivot out of that because there simply aren't that many COVID replacement guys. And I'm not talking about the dudes getting called up from the G League. I'm talking about, like, star is out, who is backup kind of thing. So I think that's why people are looking at stashes right now. Am I reading the situation right? What's the pulse you've gotten from just kind of hanging out in the fantasy community at large?
Yeah, I think so. I think stashes we're getting, and I mean, just going through our Discord server and looking at questions, a lot of them are aimed at stashing and who should I pick up, who should I bench, that sort of thing, which means that rosters are getting healthy now. And so, yeah, we're not looking at, what Kiefer Sykes and I can't even think of some of the names. Dwayne Washington on the Pacers. Lance Stevenson, God.
Oh, he made him dance, though, didn't he?
Oh, yeah, the questions we got about him. And no, you don't need to go and get him. So, no, look, I think we're starting to get back to a normal space. And, I mean, it doesn't help. Like I have noticed with a few of the teams, and it's in our blurb feed this morning, teams are, whether they're doing it just to stir up emotions in fans, but they're talking like Kawhi Leonard. Could he be back? Jonathan Isaac is actually alive and practicing. And so now we get all these questions. Do I stash Kawhi Leonard or do I stash Jonathan Isaac? Short answer is probably not. But those questions are starting to come in. And then we've got the trade deadline, which is less than a month now, I think, away. I think it's the 10th of February, potentially.
You've done a better job of looking ahead than I have. I think I knew was about a month.
Yeah, I have a feeling it's the 10th.
Yeah, you're right. That's that Thursday.
And so now we're seeing the whole Ben Simmons thing kick-starting again after we hadn't heard anything for about a month. And so that's going to start. We're going to start getting a lot of questions about, do we stash Ben Simmons? I mean, Ben Simmons is probably rostered, hasn't been dropped, but look, I think that is the direction we're heading in now is stashing. Isaiah Hartenstein has been a very common question about stashing as well.
Yeah, who, I guess we could pivot into favorites or least favorites. Who's the guy? Who are you stashing right now? I can give one of my own. We could potentially go back and forth because there's a handful, and it's easier to do in a Roto Games Cap format where I have a few more leagues as opposed to head-to-head where, I might only have one. I'm in 2 head-to-head leagues that only have 1 injured list slot. Those ones are full-on roll of the dice this year. The ones that have 2 or 3, at least you can get a little bit of a better feeling on it. But, like, Bam Adebayo's been out a while. Jonathan Isaac, Jeremy Grant. You mentioned Isaiah Hartenstein. That's another really interesting. Kawhi, Jamal Murray. Who jumps out at you? Because the one that I've been kind of keying in on for a while is Kelly Olynyk, and I was just about to give up before they put out a statement that was like, oh, yeah, he's being recalled from the G League, and he's getting a little bit closer. The Pistons' front court is pretty gross these days without Jeremy Grant. So I think I'm probably still sticking with the Olynyk one. Who's someone that you actually are stashing right now or trying to?
So yeah, I'm just sort of flicking through my teams. I know someone that I'm holding on to and sort of been preaching to hold him all season, and he has been decent. Is Alperen Şengün, who's out at the moment. I don't know what the latest is. Reevaluated in a week, so he's due to be reevaluated in a couple of days. Yeah, look, I'm stashing him wherever I can, and he has been decent enough. So it's not like he's been a guy that hasn't been giving you any production. I'm just having a look at where he ranks. So he's only he's outside the top 200, but I know he was starting to trend up before he went down with his injury. And I mean, it is hard with these teams like Detroit and like the Rockets because it is hard to project what they're going to do. From the outside looking in, we could contact them and say, yes, this is what you should be doing. It doesn't mean they're going to do it.
Good luck to us on that one.
Yeah. So, look, he's a guy for me that I'm looking at. I've sort of likened him a little bit to Nikola Jokic, a very, very, very light version, but he does contribute sort of across the board in most categories. Shoots efficiently, gets some defensive stats, passes the ball well, grabs some rebounds. So yeah, for me, he's probably at the top of my list, or pretty close to the top of my list, actually.
I'm trying to leave off names like I mentioned Adebayo when I was just listing guys that are out for a long stretch of time because someone like a second rounder or where late second, that guy's not getting dropped even when he's hurt. So in an effort to sort of be, I want to try to stick to like what you said with Şengün. That's someone who's not necessarily 100% rostered. Hartenstein. What do you think about the other names we've brought up? What do you think about Hartenstein, Jonathan Isaac, Jeremy Grant, Kelly Olynyk? Are any of those guys on your radar?
Hartenstein is. For me, guys like Kawhi, Jonathan Isaac, Markelle Fultz, I'm not going near them. I mean, if people want to take a chance on them, that's fine. But I just don't think, even if they do come back, they're going to sit back-to-backs. They're only going to play 15. I mean, Jonathan Isaac's been out for like 7 years. So he's not going to come in and play significant minutes. Orlando aren't going anywhere this season, so they're not going to go, oh, well, look, he can make a difference to our season. We need to get him back on the floor. So I'm not touching any of those long-term injured guys. Hartenstein is someone that I had added before he went down. His injury was really bad timing for him and for fantasy managers because he was just starting to carve out. I mean, there was even a discussion on, is he a better option than Ivica Zubac? I don't think the Clippers were going to go that way, but he was producing standard league value in 20 minutes a night. But now Ibaka has got a few games under his belt and has looked better. I still hope that they run with Hartenstein as the backup, but I don't know. I guess they might feel a little bit obliged to get Ibaka out there. So Hartenstein's a tricky one for me. I really like what he can do, but I'm just not certain he's going to get the minutes that he would have if he hadn't gone down with injury.
Yeah, I can't argue with you on that one. What about the All-Star break? What about the trade deadline? Is there anything you're doing this far out, a month ahead in terms of squatting on guys? I tend to look at folks within about 10 days, but I know that I'm also very conservative when it comes to trade deadline squats.
There's probably not a lot I'm doing at the moment. I guess you want to keep an eye on those teams like Houston, like Detroit, like Orlando, who could look to ship out some of their veterans, like Daniel Tice could very well go. Jeremy Grant, he's not a veteran, but there's lots of rumors around Jeremy Grant going. And so more, rather than focusing on those players, have a look at who's going to be left. And so for the Pistons, I know someone like a Hamidou Diallo who's been quite productive over the last month. But as soon as sort of these guys started coming back, like Stewart came back, Grant's going to come back, everyone sort of go, okay, well, Diallo, he's just a drop now, but maybe he's not. if Grant goes, maybe Diallo gets 26, 28 minutes the rest of the way and can have some value. The Tice one sort of leads into Şengün a little bit. If Tice is shipped out, does Şengün step into that 27, 28-minute role? Eric Gordon could very well go as well. So I'm just, at the moment, I'm just keeping an eye on those teams.
I can't believe that we have Eric Gordon stuff going on this season. It's absolutely remarkable, isn't it? Okay, well,
yeah.
Let me dig into your mindset a little bit. This is the fun part for me. When you start to make these calculations on stashing injured players or sizing up the trade deadline, let's start with the injured players. What's the methodology on your handicap? Because I know every situation is a little bit different. How do you sort of compute whether something is worthwhile?
Yeah, I mean, I go with my gut a bit and probably too much in some situations because, as you know, you as a fan, if you are pretty heavily invested in fantasy, you're going to have your own opinions and your own thoughts on what teams should be doing. And if you're led by that too much, then you're often disappointed because we know that teams like, DeAnthony Melton, everyone's had a gut feeling about how good he can be and how many minutes he should get, but it just never seems to happen. And so, I do try to go with my gut, but I also try to make sure that I do my research and have a look at past sort of history and actually documented evidence of what players are doing. But looking at team build, you know that I punt in pretty much every league that I'm in. So that factors into my decision because a player like a Hartenstein in a team where I'm punting guard stats and I'm just looking for blocks and rebounds and field goal percentage, then I don't need to look at his overall production. And so if he does come back and only gets 18 minutes, that might still be enough for him to have some value for my team, especially in a deeper league, in a 16 or a 14 team league. So having a look at what they can do in limited minutes plays sort of a big role in my decision making when looking at stashing or streaming guys in like that. That's probably I guess the biggest thing that I focus on is just how they fit my team and how many minutes I would need them to be playing to have value, and whether or not I think they're going to get that, but also whether or not they will get that based on actual facts.
So let's take it into an individual player. Let's take Kelly Olynyk, who I've been trying to convince myself to hold on to and have largely continued to do so. I think there was one spot where I was like, it's too much. I need more good news before I can do it. How would you walk through your own brain on whether to bother on Kelly Olynyk? And you can tell me that I'm nuts, by the way. I don't care if you disagree with me. I'm never sold on this stuff. I think people will get a kick out of understanding what we each think through when we're making a decision like this.
So Olynyk's a tough one because we actually don't have a huge sample size this season on what his role was.
Right.
Because he only when did he get injured? It was
12, 4 weeks into the year, I think.
It was like sort of early to mid-November, I think.
Yeah.
So he probably only played 3 or 4 weeks. He was on a new team. They were still figuring out his role. So I think he was drafted sort of top 100-ish from memory in a lot of places. Then he was dropped in a few leagues because he wasn't quite living up to, I think people were still riding that Houston stretch that he had the season before where he was a top 20 player.
Yeah.
So he's a tricky one because we didn't get a sort of a good sample size of what his role was going to be long term. And I think now when he comes back, Jeremy Grant will also be coming back at the same time or similar time, but is Jeremy Grant going to be traded? Is Olynyk going to be traded? Because he's not part of their future. Did they sign him to build up his trade value and then look at trading him for a young piece or a draft pick or something? We don't know. Isaiah Stewart hasn't panned out the way that they had probably hoped. He's been pretty ordinary, to be honest. Trey Lyles is their standout center at the moment. That's sort of all you need to know about.
Yeah, it's not great.
No, it's terrible. And so Olynyk's a really hard one for me. I'm not stashing him anywhere, but I didn't have him anywhere. And I haven't actually seen him drop. Like, I think a lot of people are still sitting on him. I'm sure he is out there in a few leagues.
Yeah, but you make a series of really good points there. There's a lot of unknown around Olynyk. Now, the one thing we did see is that there was one game or two games, I think, two maybe, that Jeremy Grant sat out early in the year with, I think it was a sprained ankle, and Olynyk was a monster for those 2 days. Missed some free throws, so it sort of cluttered what was otherwise really beefy fantasy lines. So then you have that to weigh into this equation as well, which is, what if they both come back? Does Olynyk fall back into that 24-minute backup role behind Isaiah Stewart, where we saw signs of it, but really did look more like a top 120 sort of per game situation? Does Jeremy Grant get traded, which opens up a world for Olynyk, where then all of a sudden he goes from top 120 to maybe as good as like a top 50 type of player? Does he get traded someplace where he doesn't have value? Because I don't think anybody's going to trade for Olynyk to make him a 32-minute-a-game starter. He would be, a stretch 5 kind of complementary centerpiece on some team with championship aspirations. Nobody's going to give him the type of role he had in Houston, or frankly, even the role I think he would have in Detroit if he comes back without Jeremy Grant. So a lot of things do kind of have to fall in place for that upside to kick in, but also, and kind of this is the same thing I'm looking at with a guy like Jonathan Isaac. How many guys are out there right now that you could sit on where you can say, look, if things break the right way, this is top 50, top 40. Jonathan Isaac was top 25 before he got hurt. Whenever the hell, 2 years. I don't know what year was that? 2020? That was 2020, I think.
Yeah,
my God.
He's been out forever.
So that, I think, has to be a big part of how you create this balance. Like, I'm not going to sit on a guy for a month if I don't think there's a way he's going to get any chance, I should say, to get inside the top 50. I'm not gonna sit on a guy that long. But like Isaiah Hartenstein's the other side. Do I sit on this dude for a week and see if he could be a top 100 guy? Maybe. It's not linear. It's not like, oh, sit on a guy for 1 week for a top 100, sit on a guy for 4 weeks for top 50. But there is some correlation there, isn't there?
Yeah, there is. Yeah, I think you have to look at a player's ceiling, their floor, and as you said with Olynyk, we have seen him be a top 50 player when given those minutes. And in Detroit, if Jeremy Grant goes, Isaiah Stewart hasn't been good. I mean, Trey Lyles could go for all we know. Then there's a chance that they just go, okay, we haven't been able to build up Olynyk's value as we would have liked this season. So for the last month, we're just going to give him 34 minutes a night and let him go. And then we can reevaluate once the season is done. And if he can play those minutes down the stretch and Detroit aren't playing to win games, they're just going to put him out there. He could very well be a difference maker in fantasy leagues. So someone like that, you definitely have to stash. Whereas I think if you look at Hartenstein, his ceiling is not that high because the Clippers are more than likely going to be fighting for a sort of an 8th seed, a 9th seed, something like that. Paul George will come back. Kawhi, maybe he'll come back. So I don't see a scenario other than an injury, and you can't rely on injuries. So other than Zubac's going down with a long-term injury and Hartenstein would have to start, I don't really see him getting to a spot where he can play 30 minutes a night and can be a top 50 player. I think best case he could be top 100. So stashing him is okay, but chances are he's if he's on the waiver wire, he'll be there until we get word that he's coming back, and then everyone will swoop on him.
So let me play a little bit of devil's advocate on a different player. You mentioned Kawhi Leonard. I think everybody that listens to this show knows I'm not about to advocate sitting on Kawhi, but let's for a moment pretend that I am. And I've seen people say it. I've seen analysts say it. I don't think it's the popular opinion, but I have seen folks say pick him up and stash him. Talk me out of it. Pretend I'm asking you, I really want to go pick up Kawhi Leonard. Why should I or should I not do it?
Yeah, well, I mean, the report we had was that he was ahead of schedule. I think that was the wording. Let me just bring him up.
Yeah, market somewhat vague, but you know.
Yeah, and I think for me that's the argument is that the news that we had. Here we go. The news that we had is that he's ahead of schedule in his rehab, and that a return during the season is within reach. First thing for me is we don't know what his schedule was. We didn't have a date that he was coming back. It wasn't, oh yeah, he'll be back April. He'll be back March. We didn't know. So ahead of schedule could just mean that
yeah,
he
what
might
schedule?
come back this year. We have no idea. And a return during the season is within reach. That doesn't fill me with confidence that he's definitely going to be back. And so that's the first thing. It's good that he hasn't had any setbacks. For me, this actually just gives me confidence for next season. In that, whenever he comes back, if it's this end of this season, if it's the playoffs, he should be. If he's ahead of his schedule and looking at potentially coming back this season, that would just give me a bit more confidence looking ahead to next year.
That dude's getting drafted at like 20 next year. Book it.
Yeah. I think so. So that would be the first sort of argument I would have in terms of stashing. The next one would be that the Clippers, obviously Kawhi and Paul George are their future, and at least their short-term sort of 2 to 3 year future, because Kawhi is 30 now. So they're not going to view this season as we can win this season. I would hope that management, coaches have come to terms with that. This is not going to be their year, and so there's no point rushing Kawhi back and getting him in if he's potentially ready, potentially not, rushing things. So even if he does come back, they're going to limit his minutes a little bit. Back-to-backs more than likely he'll sit one of those games.
Not like he was playing them anyway, but yeah.
Yeah. And then I think you need to look at, well, that's another thing. I mean, you need to look at his history. As he wasn't playing, but he was starting to get back to playing some back-to-backs. But since his quad thing, he's always missed games. I mean, even last year when he was healthy, you had to factor in that he was going to miss 15 games of the season. So having had another major injury, that's not going anywhere. And then look, even if you do stash him and get him, and I think Josh Lloyd put a thing on Twitter, and lots of people commented, and analysts and readers and listeners, all that commented on Kawhi. I think you need to, and I said if I was to stash him, the short answer is probably no, I won't. If I was to stash him, it would only be if I could tick off a lot of boxes, and it would be that I was sitting really comfortably in my standings and there was really no way I was going to miss out on the playoffs. Or potentially in a roto league where I'm also sitting right up near the top, and I don't have a lot of injured players. But yeah, if you're stashing him in a head-to-head league, and you need to make your playoffs, it's very good to say, if I have him in the playoffs, he could be a difference maker. But if you're not in the playoffs, what does it matter? So yeah, there's a lot going against stashing Kawhi. And I think the same would be said for someone like Jonathan Isaac.
Yeah, I'll throw Jamal Murray on that fire as well. I'm frankly just envious of anyone who's not dealing with the injury bug. Like who has an open roster spot to stash someone else right now? I guess the argument there is like, well, do you stash your top 100 guy who has COVID for a week and a half, or do you just drop him and use that week and a half on Kawhi Leonard? But it's not really like, it's not an apples to apples comparison, Like Kawhi's not coming back in a week and a half, and ahead of what schedule? Ultimately, like you said, you basically have to be Roto Games Cap on pace somehow, magical turn of events, and then be okay with getting like 5 games out of him at the end of the year. Because I don't see how there's any possibility it's more than like 8. Doesn't that feel like the absolute maximum is 8 games in the regular season?
Yeah,
Probably.
I would. Yeah, I would say.
I don't know.
Yeah, that'd be. I mean, I don't know when the season ends. I think it's mid-April.
Yeah,
maybe. So, yeah, I mean, best case you would see him coming back mid-March, maybe. Even if it's early March, what's that? 6 weeks. So that's 20 games, 24 games.
And probably missing one every single week.
Probably missing one, so at least half. So, yeah, so like 8 to 10, I think, best case. But by then, your fantasy playoffs have started.
And possibly ended if you don't go to the end of the regular season.
And ended. That's right. Yeah, I know all of my leagues I've finished, I think, 2 weeks before I think most of my leagues are finishing beginning of April.
All right, you've convinced me. Perhaps even I might have been pre-convinced, but, we'll throw a little extra in there. Next week or the week after, whenever we reconvene, Adam, let's talk strategy, head-to-head strategy at this point in the season, because I think folks are looking at about, what do we think, 5-6 weeks for a lot of folks before their playoffs start, maybe 8 that go towards the end of the regular season. This is it's a time to check in, I think. Can we do that next week or the week after?
Yeah, and I know I've already started getting a lot of questions about people that are punting and when is the right time to narrow your punt. So if you're punting one category, do I now start looking at punting 2 or 3 and really focusing in? So when is the right time to do that? So that'll be a good discussion to have.
Beautiful. The great Adam King, ladies and gentlemen, at AdamKing91 on Twitter. Go follow him. Adam, again, Happy New Year, man. I'll talk to you in a week.
Yeah, same to you. I will talk to you then.
Oh, I know you guys liked that. 30 uninterrupted minutes of fantasy talk. Not a promo to be found, which means, damn it, one's coming now. Please don't advance through these promos. These are actually really important. And this week, as last week, I want to remind you guys of our partners at expressvpn.com/hoopball, where you can get 15 months for the price of 12. Bonus 3 months on your year-long subscription. Look, using the internet without ExpressVPN is like leaving the keys in your car at a restaurant, at a gas station, whatever. Most of the time, folks are not going to see it, but if someone walks by and they're like, hey, this person just gave me a car, that's basically what it is. Every time you connect to an unencrypted network, cafes, hotels, airports, whatever, any hacker on that can gain access to your personal information. Your ISP has access to your personal information. A 12-year-old could do it. Hackers make $1,000 selling personal info on the dark web. You ever wonder how your credit card info just appears? It's because you're on some unencrypted Wi-Fi somewhere. It's easy. ExpressVPN creates an encrypted tunnel so that you and the internet are surrounded on all sides. It would take a hacker a supercomputer over 1 billion years to get through their encryption level. So if you value your privacy at all, get ExpressVPN. And I've told you guys, the thing I like the most about it, I actually am not that overly concerned with my privacy, which is kind of dumb, but also mostly I sit at home and work from home. So, I don't expect folks, maybe there's someone in the apartment complex, but, old hacker Magoo up in apartment 304, I'm not super concerned about them. What I like ExpressVPN for is shielding my location. And I've told you guys about that before. If you're trying to use streaming services, which we have a billion of them here. I'm sure you guys do too. We got Disney, we got Hulu, we got Prime Video, we got Netflix, I guess is a big one. You got League Pass, you've got MLB, whatever they call it. It's not Game Day. I don't know why I can't think of the name. I stopped getting it because it was too damn expensive, and I'd mostly just watch Dodger games here anyway, and we have Spectrum Cable. But anyway, point is, League Pass in particular, really important stuff. Get expressvpn.com/hoopball. It's the personalized URL. You don't have to put in a code if you use that URL. expressvpn.com/hoopball. Check them out right now. We actually had a relatively medium, I guess it's a lightish Monday. They moved some games around on the calendar. A couple of key thoughts from Monday's results here before we transition and get you guys back. Transition, that's like terming for folks passing away. Before we get you back over to social media for the rest of the day's news, PJ Washington looks pretty good. Played 27 minutes off the bench for Charlotte. No Kelly Oubre, so that's opening up a few extra minutes for guys like PJ. Cody Martin is going to be a beneficiary there. I'm actually cool with streaming Cody Martin for the next week. He ain't going to shoot much, but 3 boards, 2 assists, 3 steals, 2 3-pointers. He's that across-the-board kind of guy. You just have to be aware that it's not going to be the eye-popper fill-in stream. This is going to be the can I grab a few stats in a bunch of different categories, and he should be inside the top 100 for this week, which makes him an all-league types kind of streamer. Jordan Awara continues to play relatively well for Milwaukee. I'm still not taking the plunge on it. I think we see Drew Holiday back in the not-too-distant future, and that probably clears that situation up. And we move along. Utah, still without Rudy Gobert. They've got a game tomorrow, and then they're off for a couple of days, if I'm not mistaken. I would certainly stream Hassan Whiteside for that ball game, and then you might want to think about moving on ahead of time, just so you can kind of get ahead of the curve. You're not sitting on Whiteside 2 or 3 extra days and then not get to utilize his services. On the Detroit side, Adam and I just talked a bunch about the Pistons. Isaiah Stewart actually got off to a pretty good start in this game. He had 3 blocks, 5 boards at halftime. He had 1 rebound in the second half. I think that was his entire line. And then Trey Lyles came in, played 29 minutes in a win. Adam mentioned Hamidou Diallo. He has taken a hit. When he doesn't shoot free throws, he can kind of stay above the fray. Took 2 in this game, made 1 of them. Gets steals, which is nice. Gets some boards, which is nice. Does get some assists, which is nice. He's still kind of hanging on. And when they put up a $126, a lot of guys are going to have value that might not have in a game you win 106-96 instead. Sadiq Bey was hot. Cade Cunningham, we talked about him. He's sort of the one guy you're definitely starting for Detroit right now. And Bey's kind of a maybe. Like, this game was not an accurate representation of what he's done since folks have come back. 29 points on 14 shots means you're really freaking hot. Corey Joseph played 25 minutes also. There's just too many bodies right now in Detroit. And here I am arguing that Jeremy Grant and Kelly Olynyk are decent stashes when there are sort of already too many guys floating around. Adam made a good point, though. Diallo's a guy that could step into a larger role depending on how the next month goes. That doesn't mean you need to squat on him, but it means that he's close enough right now where you could, and in a head-to-head format, he's doing enough. So he's right on the cusp. Coin flip. Bey's kind of a coin flip right now also. It's almost exactly what I said on yesterday's podcast, which was like, do you have to start them? No. Could you? Yeah. Not excited about it. Boston lost Marcus Smart mid-game to a thigh bruise. We'll see how that shakes out. I don't think it's going to be enough for Jay Rich or Dennis Schroeder with him out. They kind of need one of the biggest usage guys on the shelf to make a stink. Still no Malcolm Brogdon. Blah, blah, blah. Indiana. No one's really stepped up. Torrey Craig's the closest right now. O'Shea Brissett played 35 minutes. He didn't do much. Justin Holiday, 33 minutes. He was okay. Close. But it's pretty much just Sabonis and Turner right now. Knicks beat the Spurs in a runaway. Nice to see Alec Burks make half his shots. He's startable while he's starting. Mitchell Robinson, 4 blocks. He's startable while there isn't much of a backup. And then Emmanuel Quickley, he's got 9 cat issues. RJ Barrett, big game, but he's got 9 cat issues. Evan Fournier, you're not going to fool me again, Evan. 18 points in 22 minutes. We won't get fooled again. Matisse Thybulle's a start. That's a pretty easy one. Daniel Tice got the start because of Joel Embiid. We can keep rolling along there. Anthony Simons dominating with no Dame, out for the next at least 2 weeks. Nasir Little, he's probably startable in head-to-head. Ben McLemore got hot, but you're probably not going to trust that every ball game. And Rocco, he's great, especially while Nance is out. Also, Kyrie played, tweaked an ankle a little bit, said he's going to be fine, so I won't read anything into it. Cam Thomas had a big game. Day'Ron Sharpe had a big game. But, with the Nets, it's someone new every single ball game. And Nick Claxton left with a sore hamstring about halfway through the game. I'd say hold him. We'll see how he responds. He's been playing too well lately. And Cleveland beat Sacramento. Kings had a chance to win it. De'Aaron Fox had a short jumper bounce out on him. Tyrese Halliburton's a go. Fox, whatever. You drafted him against all my warnings. But he healed. When he's on a heater, he's good. When he's not, he's not. He's probably startable because he'd pretty much be like the king of all streamers if he wasn't. So you start him. Jared Allen, go. Evan Mobley, go. Lauri Markkanen's been a little bit better lately. He's a go. Kevin Love somehow is a go. Darius Garland's a go. Rajon Rondo, a guy we've been tracking a little bit, played only 20 minutes here. He's not that far away. 6 assists, 2 steals. Oh, boy. I can't believe that I'm even considering it. Mentioned on yesterday's show, I picked him up in a couple spots, but that was only because I had Tyus Jones to drop, and there just wasn't anybody else doing anything. Hey, the other partner we want to make sure you guys are visiting. I told you enough about Manscaped so far this month. Remember, we didn't do enough for them in December. We're doing more here. Thrive Fantasy. That's our buddies over there. It's our buddies. We've told you about MyBookie a million times also. I'm trusting you guys that you'll go visit Manscaped and MyBookie, because they don't get big-time promo today. You know who does? ThriveFantasy.com and the Thrive Fantasy app. Prop up and use promo code ETHOS, ETHOS. When you sign up at Thrive Fantasy, it's easy. You go there, you click the giant blue sign-up button. Your first deposit match up to $100 with the promo code, and free contest entry vouchers. That's maybe the more important thing, because like I said, you can put in $10. Great. You get your $10 deposit match. Doesn't feel like all that much, but damn. An extra $40 in contest entry vouchers? Come on, you put in $10, you end up with 60? A 5x bonus on top of what you put in? 6x overall? That's pretty good. That's pretty damn good. All you got to know, no. All you got to know, nope. We can talk here on this show. All you got to know is how the big names are going to do. Football. Who's going to pass? What's Aaron Rodgers going to pass for? Over, under. That's it. They give you a number. You take the over, you take the under. If you get the points, you rack them up, choose 10 out of 20 options in the NBA contest, you win money. They work with the Jaguars and Chargers, by the way. Thrive Fantasy, very reputable, strong company. Really happy to be in partnership with them, so please do go check them out. And our buddies over at ExpressVPN.com, as we told you earlier in the show. Not a ton of promo on today's podcast. Gave you guys a little bit of a mini break from that. Just a little. Got to do something. Got to pay the bills. And that'll wrap it up. I'm Dan Vespers. He was Adam King. He's gone off to start his day. It's still early out there in Australia. At AdamKing91, at Dan Vespers. Please do drop us a follow. We each do a lot on Twitter for the good folks at sportsethos.com, at EthosFantasyBK, the big-time news feed. Enjoy your Tuesday. We'll talk more stashing as the weeks go. See if we can pick off some real interesting fat streamers these days. There's actually a lot I'm looking at on tonight's card. Memphis is really interesting to me. Warriors with Clay, really interesting to me. Wizards getting guys back slowly but surely. Chris Boucher in Toronto. Clippers. Who the hell's going to do anything for them? Is Nick Batum ready to roll again? No Will Barton for Denver? Monty Morris time? I don't know. It's some ugly games that might happen, but actually really interesting ones. Dig in, folks. We got some homework tonight. Back at you tomorrow. You know how it goes. This is Fantasy NBA Today. Later.